The council chamber floated in the empty space between stars, a massive ring of metal and light that had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic peace. Inside, 12 species sat in their designated sections, each representative glowing softly under the chamber's artificial lighting. They were discussing trade routes when the alarms began to scream. Commander Day 1 stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the view screen as his ship tore through the fabric of space itself. The quantum breach drive hummed beneath his feet, a piece of technology humanity had developed in secret over the past decade. Behind him, his science officer Hannah monitored the readings, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Breach complete in 30 seconds, she said calmly. "They're going to be very angry." "Good," Day 1 replied. "Angry means they're paying attention." The Council had been watching Earth for 60 years. Humanity discovered this truth by accident when a deep space probe caught a transmission it was never meant to intercept. The Council had been studying them, evaluating them, and ultimately voting to keep them locked away from the greater galaxy. The official term was quarantine for developmental observation. The real meaning was simple. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed out. Day 1 refused to accept that decision. So did Earth's unified government. If the Council wanted to keep humanity in a cage, they would need to explain why to humanity's face. The Indomitable materialized inside the Council chamber without warning. Impossible physics made possible through human stubbornness and engineering brilliance. The ship hung there, battle-scarred and bristling with weapons, directly in the center of the circular chamber. Emergency shields flickered to life around the alien representatives. Security systems armed themselves. And for the first time in the Council's long history, someone had crashed their private meeting. "Attention, Galactic Council. Day 1 broadcast all frequencies. Humanity requests an audience. Immediately." The chamber erupted in chaos. The vril representatives, insectoid beings with crystalline wings, clicked and chirped in alarm. The Luminara, creatures made of living light and crystal, pulsed with angry reds and oranges. The Thalari, aquatic beings in their environmental suits, released clouds of chemical signals that their translators rendered as profanity. Only one being remained calm. Elder Kira of the Luminara, the Council's longest-serving member, dimmed her glow to a soft blue. A translated voice filled the chamber. "This is an unprecedented violation of Council law," she said. "You have committed an act of war." Day 1 stepped forward to the view screen, making sure every camera in the chamber could see his face. "We committed an act of survival. You voted to imprison our species without trial, without representation, without even informing us of the charges. That ends today." A human shuttle detached from the Indomitable and drifted toward the Council's diplomatic platform. Inside were 3 people. Day 1 himself, his military strategist Taesung, and Ambassador Ji Woo. The Council could have destroyed the shuttle easily, but curiosity and protocol stayed their weapons. The shuttle docked, and the 3 humans emerged into the chamber. Ji Woo wore formal diplomatic robes, designed to appear both respectful and unmistakably human. She bowed slightly to the assembled Council, a gesture of respect but not submission. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "Honored Council members, humanity comes before you seeking recognition and equality. We know you have observed our world. We know you have judged us. We ask only for the chance to defend ourselves and to join this galactic community as equals." A vril representative chittered aggressively. The translator converted it to words. "Your species is violent, unstable, and reckless. You have fought countless wars on your single planet. You have nearly destroyed yourselves multiple times. You are exactly the kind of civilization the Council was designed to protect the galaxy from." Taesung stepped forward, his military bearing evident in every movement. "Yes, we fought wars. We struggled. We made mistakes. but we also learned from them. We unified our world. We developed technology that clearly surpasses your expectations, given our ability to appear here uninvited. We are not asking for permission to exist. We are demanding recognition of the fact that we already do. The debate lasted for hours. The council was divided. Some species saw humanity's arrival as proof of their danger. Others recognized that any species capable of breaking into the council chamber was too powerful to simply ignore. The Luminara worried about precedent. The Thalari worried about stability. The Vril worried about everything. Finally, Elder Kira called for silence. Her light pulsed in complex patterns as she considered the situation. "The council faces a choice," she said. "We can reject humanity and make them our enemies. Or we can accept them conditionally and guide them toward peaceful integration. I propose a probationary membership. Humanity will be granted limited council rights while proving they can coexist with galactic civilization." The restrictions were harsh. Humanity could expand to only 3 star systems beyond Earth. Their military forces had to be reduced by 40%. All first contact situations required council approval and supervision. Human technology would be subject to regular inspections. The probationary period would last 50 Earth years. Ji Wu wanted to argue, to demand better terms. But Day One touched her arm gently, a silent signal. They had achieved the primary goal, recognition. The rest could be negotiated over time. "We accept the council's terms," Ji Wu said. "Humanity will prove worthy of full membership." As the humans prepared to return to their shuttle, Elder Kira approached them privately. Her light dimmed to a soft, almost warm yellow. "You should not have come here," she said quietly. The council's restrictions were not meant as punishment. They were meant as protection. Protection from what? Day One asked. "From being noticed," Kira replied. "The galaxy is far larger and far more dangerous than you understand. The council exists not to suppress younger species, but to shield them. We keep civilizations small, quiet, and peaceful because there are things in the dark spaces between stars that hunt for civilizations that grow too loud, too bright, too ambitious." She paused once, a gesture that seemed almost sad. "You have just announced your presence to the entire galaxy. You have made yourselves visible. I hope, for all our sakes, that you are ready for what comes next." The humans returned to the Indomitable in silence, Kyra's warning echoing in their minds. As the ship prepared to jump back to human space, Hana noticed something on her sensors. A faint signal, barely detectable, originating from somewhere deep in uncharted space. It pulsed once, twice, then vanished. "Did you catch that?" she asked Day One. "Catch what?" "Nothing," Hana said, doubting her instruments. "Probably just background radiation." But deep in the galactic core, in a place where stars were born and died in cosmic violence, something ancient stirred. It had felt the ripples of the quantum breach. It had sensed a new presence in the galaxy. And slowly, patiently, it began to wake. 6 months had passed since humanity forced its way into the Galactic Council, and Commander Day One was learning that political victories could feel like defeats. His new office on Council Station was smaller than his quarters aboard the Indomitable, and the walls were covered with regulations, restrictions, and requirements that humanity had to follow. Earth's military was being downsized as promised. 3 colony expeditions had been approved, but 20 others were waiting for Council clearance that never seemed to come. Every human innovation required inspection. Every trade agreement needed approval. It felt less like membership and more like parole. Dr. Hannah had spent those 6 months doing what she did best, digging through data. The Council had granted humanity access to their historical archives as part of the membership agreement, and she had been reading through thousands of years of records. What she found disturbed her deeply. She called Day One to her research lab in the middle of the night cycle. When he arrived, she looked exhausted, her eyes red from hours of screen time. "I found something wrong with the Council's history," she said without greeting. Day One sat down, recognizing her tone. Hannah only sounded like this when she had discovered something important. "Show me." She pulled up a timeline on the main display. Over the past 10,000 years, 17 advanced civilizations have vanished from Council records. Not destroyed in wars. Not collapsed economically. Just gone. The official records say they transcended to higher dimensions, or chose voluntary isolation. But look at the pattern. The timeline showed each disappearance. The intervals were irregular, but each vanished civilization had one thing in common. They had all reached a certain level of technological advancement and territorial expansion right before they disappeared. "It's like there's a ceiling," Hannah continued. "Civilizations grow to a certain point, and then they're gone. The Council never investigates. They just update the records and move on." "That could be coincidence," Day One said, though he didn't believe it. "That's what I thought too, until I cross-referenced it with restricted files. 3 civilizations tried to investigate previous disappearances. All 3 are now among the disappeared." The implications hung heavy in the air. Before Day One could respond, an urgent message came through. Captain Yuna was requesting immediate contact. He opened the channel. Yuna's face appeared on the screen. She was aboard the exploration vessel Discovery, technically conducting approved survey operations in human-authorized space. Technically. In reality, she had taken her ship beyond Council boundaries to investigate some unusual readings. "Sir, you need to see this," Yuna said. "We found something." The transmission showed a planet dead and dark. The Discovery had followed old navigation markers to a system that didn't appear on any current Council charts. When they arrived, they found the remains of a civilization. "Scans indicate this was the Kravith homeworld," Yuna explained. "They were a Council member species of 3,000 years ago. According to records, they chose isolation. But this doesn't look like a choice." The images showed cities reduced to glass, oceans that had boiled away, leaving only dried basins. And everywhere, strange marks scored into the planet's surface. They looked like claw marks, impossibly large, as if something massive had dragged its appendages across the entire world. "We found a data archive in what used to be their capital," Yuna continued. "It survived because it was buried under 3 kilometers of rock. I'm sending you the last entries now." Day One and Hannah watched the Kravith recordings. The extinct aliens had been similar to Earth's lizards, bipedal and intelligent. Their final messages were terrifying. Ships torn apart in space. Weapons that had no effect. Descriptions of creatures that phased through shields and hulls. And a final desperate warning. "We called it the Apex," the last Kravith leader said, her image flickering. "It came from the deep dark. It cannot be reasoned with. It cannot be stopped. If anyone finds this message, run. Run and stay quiet. The Apex maintains the balance, and we grew too loud." The recording ended. Day One felt cold. "Bring that archive back immediately. Tell no one what you found." But it was too late for secrecy. Council monitoring systems had detected the Discovery's unauthorized jump. Within hours, Ambassador Ji Woo was summoned before the full Council to explain the violation. She stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by angry alien representatives. The Vril were demanding sanctions. The Thalori wanted humanity's probationary status revoked. But Ji Woo had brought the Kravith archive with her. "Before you judge us for breaking your rules," she said calmly, "perhaps you should explain why you've been lying to the entire galaxy." She played the Kravith recordings for everyone to see. The chamber fell silent. When the final message ended, Jiwoo turned to Elder Kyra. "You knew," she said. "You've always known. The apex is real, and you've been hiding it." Elder Kyra's light dimmed to almost nothing. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then she pulsed with a deep sad blue. "Yes," she admitted. "We knew. The Council's primary purpose has never been peace or cooperation. It has been survival. The apex is why we exist." A Thalari elder activated its suit's speakers. "The apex maintains balance in the galaxy. It has done so for longer than any of our civilizations have existed. Every species that grows too powerful, too ambitious, too visible is culled. We survive by staying small, by staying quiet, by limiting our expansion and our conflicts." Another representative, a being made of metallic gas, added its voice. "The Council enforces restrictions to keep all species beneath the apex's notice. We limit technology. We control expansion. We prevent wars. Not because we are noble, but because we are terrified." Day One had joined Jiwoo in the chamber. He stepped forward, his voice hard. "So the Council isn't a union of equals. It's a cage. And you wanted to lock humanity inside it without ever telling us why." "Yes," Kyra said simply. "Because every species that learns of the apex tries to fight it. And every one of them has died. The Kravith were not the first. They will not be the last. We chose survival over truth. And you were going to keep us in the dark forever," Jiwoo said. "We hoped you would accept the restrictions and live," Kyra replied. "But humans are not good at accepting limits, are they? You broke into our council. You violated our boundaries. You uncovered our secrets. You have done in 6 months what took other species centuries. And now you know the truth that will likely doom us all." Day One looked around the chamber at the assembled species. They all looked frightened. These ancient civilizations, with their advanced technology and long histories, were living in constant fear. "How long has it been since the apex last appeared?" he asked. 3,000 years, a Vril representative chittered. "The longest quiet period in recorded history. We hoped perhaps it had finally moved on, gone dormant, or died. But the truth is, we don't know. It comes without warning. It leaves nothing behind." Hana had been analyzing data on her portable terminal. She looked up suddenly. "It's not dormant. I've been correlating the disappearances with Council expansion patterns. Every time the Council as a whole approaches certain thresholds of combined power, a species vanishes. The apex is still active. It's still watching. You've just been very careful to stay beneath its attention threshold." "Until we arrived," Day One said quietly. The implication settled over the chamber like a weight. Humanity had forced the Council to accept them. In doing so, they had pushed the combined power of galactic civilization higher than it had been in millennia. They had made noise. They had drawn attention. Elder Kira pulsed once, a gesture of resignation. What is done is done. The question now is what we do next. Do we exile humanity and hope the apex ignores the disturbance? Or do we face the possibility that our long hiding is over? Ambassador Jiwoo straightened her shoulders. Humanity didn't come to the Council to hide. We came to stand as equals. If there's a threat to galactic civilization, then we face it together. That's what the Council should have been from the beginning. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, some of the representatives began to signal agreement. Not all of them, but enough. The Council had spent millennia running from the truth. Perhaps it was time to try something different. As the session ended and humans returned to their quarters, none of them noticed the deep space monitoring stations beginning to register something unusual. A signal, faint but growing stronger, originating from the galactic core. It pulsed with a rhythm that matched nothing in the known database. The apex had heard them, and it was beginning to answer. The Council's leadership watched humanity with growing alarm over the following weeks. Instead of preparing to hide or evacuate, humans did what they always did when faced with a threat. They prepared for war. Admiral Day 1, promoted after the Creveth discovery, coordinated with Earth's military command to begin an unprecedented expansion. Construction yards that had been idle under Council restrictions roared back to life. New ships rolled out of orbital factories. Weapons research that had been suspended was reactivated with urgency. The Council sent formal complaints daily. The Vril threatened sanctions. The Thalari warned of dire consequences. But humanity had learned an important lesson. The Council's power came from unity, and that unity was fracturing. Some species quietly approved of humanity's preparations. Others were too afraid to act. Engineer Minho worked 18-hour days in Earth's primary research facility, leading a team that analyzed every scrap of data about the apex. They studied the Creveth archive, recovered fragments from other dead worlds, and pieced together a profile of their enemy. It's not a single creature, Minho explained during a briefing with Day 1 and his senior staff. The apex is more like an ecosystem. Multiple types of entities, each serving different functions. The Creveth data shows at least 5 distinct varieties, from small fighters to things the size of moons. Can they be killed? Tae-seung asked. As head of military strategy, his focus was always practical. Yes, Minho said, but not easily. Their biology is partially organic, partially something else. They can phase through standard shields. Conventional weapons have limited effect, but they're not invincible. We've developed theoretical weapons based on the Creveth research. Resonance disruptors that target their organic components. We just need time to build them. Time was something they didn't have. The signal arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. A deep space monitoring station at the edge of human territory detected it first. Lieutenant Sora was on duty when the alarms triggered. She stared at her display, not quite believing what she was seeing. The signal was powerful, broadcasting across multiple frequencies simultaneously. It wasn't directed at any specific location. Instead, it swept across the galaxy like a lighthouse beam, touching every system, every planet, every civilization. And it was unlike anything in the communication database. Sora immediately forwarded the data to Dr. Hana, who would become humanity's expert on all things Apex. Hana analyzed it with growing dread. "It's a hunting call," she said during the emergency council session that convened within hours. "The Apex uses it to mark territory and announce a hunt. We've seen fragments of similar signals in historical records, always right before a civilization disappeared. Elder Kyra's light pulsed with dark purple, a color none of the humans had seen before. How long until it arrives?" "Unknown," Hana admitted. "The signal originates from the galactic core. That's over 20,000 light-years away. Even with the fastest known drives, that's years of travel time. But we don't know how fast the Apex can move." The Vril representative was already broadcasting evacuation plans. "We must scatter. Hide in dark space. Reduce our signatures. It's the only way to survive." Ambassador Ji-woo stood and addressed the council. Running didn't save the Creveth. It didn't save any of the 17 civilizations that disappeared. The Apex found them despite their hiding. Maybe it's time to try something different. Like what? A Thalari elder asked. "Fighting? We cannot fight the Apex. It is a force of nature." "No," Ji-woo said firmly. "It's a predator. And even predators can be hurt if the prey fights back together. Humanity proposes a defensive alliance. We share our weapons technology. We fortify key systems. We prepare a unified military response. If the Apex wants to hunt us, we make sure it bleeds. The proposal caused immediate chaos. Half the council thought it was suicide. The other half was desperate enough to consider it. The debate raged for 3 days. In the end, fear won over tradition. The council agreed to form a military alliance for the first time in its 10,000-year history. Ships from a dozen species began gathering at strategic points along the galactic rim. Humanity shared its resonance disruptor technology freely. Defensive stations were built. Supply lines were established. Captain Yuna took command of a mixed squadron, human ships flying alongside Vril swarm craft and Luminara light vessels. It was strange seeing aliens on her tactical displays as allies instead of unknown contacts. Strange, but also hopeful. "Think we can actually do this?" her first officer asked during a quiet moment. "No idea," Yuna admitted. "But I'd rather die fighting than hiding." Dr. Hana continued studying the signal from her lab aboard Council Station. Something about it bothered her. It wasn't just a broadcast. It was changing. The pattern shifted slightly every few hours, adapting and evolving. She brought her findings to Lieutenant Sora, who had transferred to the station to help with analysis. Together, they made a disturbing discovery. "It's learning," Sora said, her voice hollow. "The signal isn't just marking us. It's studying us. Every time a civilization responds to it, whether by hiding, running, or broadcasting back, the signal adapts. It's gathering intelligence. Which means the Apex knows exactly what we're doing," Hana finished. "It knows we're preparing to fight." The news spread through the Allied fleet quietly. Morale took a hit, but the preparations continued. What else could they do? Weeks passed. Then months. The signal continued its sweep, growing stronger. Deep space sensors began detecting something at the edge of surveyed space. At first, it was just gravity anomalies. Then, energy signatures that matched nothing in the database. Taesung was coordinating fleet positions when the first visual contact came through. A long-range probe at the galactic rim captured footage before it was destroyed. The Apex Vanguard was massive. Dozens of entities, each one different but sharing a terrible similarity. They moved through space without ships, their bodies somehow propelling them at impossible speeds. Some resembled organic ships, all curves and flowing lines. Others looked like creatures from a nightmare, with too many limbs and geometries that hurt to look at. "Contact in 3 weeks," Taesung reported to Admiral Day 1. "They're moving faster than our projections estimated." Much faster. Day 1 studied the footage. The Apex entities didn't fly information. They swarmed, like a school of fish or a flock of birds, each individual part of a larger whole. Beautiful in a terrifying way. "Sound the general alert," he ordered. "All fleets to defensive positions. Tell the Council this is not a drill." The hunt has begun. Across Council space, alarms rang on 1,000 worlds. Civilians evacuated to underground shelters. Military personnel reported to their stations. Ships that had been in dock for centuries were pulled out and armed. Every species, every culture, every belief system united under a single purpose: survival. Ambassador Ji-woo stood on the observation deck of Council Station, watching the fleet assemble outside. Hundreds of ships from dozens of worlds, all preparing to face an enemy that had never been defeated. She thought about Earth, about how humanity had spent its entire history fighting impossible odds. This was just another impossible odd. "You know, we'll probably all die," Hana said, joining her at the window. "Probably," Ji-woo agreed. "But at least we'll die as one galaxy instead of scattered species cowering in the dark. That's worth something." In the galactic core, the Apex Prime received the data from its vanguard. The new prey was preparing to resist. Interesting. Most species ran or hid. These ones were gathering together, making themselves a larger target. The Prime analyzed this behavior, comparing it to millions of previous hunts. The conclusion was simple. The hunt would be more challenging. Therefore, more forces were required. The Prime activated reserves that had been dormant for thousands of years. The galaxy would learn once again why the apex was apex. Back on Council Station, Sora was running final checks on the sensor network when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. She pulled up the tracking data and confirmed what she was seeing. The apex forces weren't just coming from the galactic core anymore. They were also rising from deep space, from dark zones between arms of the galaxy, from regions no one had ever explored. They had been there all along, sleeping, waiting. There are hundreds of them, she whispered. Maybe thousands. She forwarded the data to Command with shaking hands. When Day One saw it, he understood. The signal hadn't just called the apex from the core. It had awakened every dormant hunter in the galaxy. The hunt wouldn't just be one battle. It would be a war on every front, in every system, against an enemy that had been preparing for millions of years. And they had 3 weeks to get ready. The first battle happened exactly 3 weeks after the initial contact warnings. At a place called the Outer Rim Station 7, 200 ships from the combined Council fleet held position there. A mix of real swarmcraft, Luminara light vessels, and supporting forces from 6 other species. They had chosen the location carefully, a choke point where the apex would have to pass through a relatively narrow corridor of stable space. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Of the 200 ships, 17 escaped. Admiral Day One watched the tactical feeds from Council Station, his command center filled with silent officers. The footage showed the Apex Vanguard arriving in waves. They didn't use weapons in the traditional sense. Instead, they simply moved through space with terrible purpose, their bodies phasing through shields as if they weren't there. A Vril cruiser fired its full arsenal. The energy beams and missiles struck an apex entity that resembled a massive eel made of metal and flesh. The creature absorbed the damage, seemed to shimmer, then extended appendages that tore through the cruiser's hull like paper. The ship broke apart, spilling atmosphere and bodies into space. Captain Yuna was stationed at a different defensive line, but she watched the same feeds. Her tactical officer, a young man named June, went pale. "They're not even trying," June whispered. "This is just instinct for them. They're hunting." Yuna understood what he meant. The apex entities didn't coordinate like a military force. They moved like predators tracking prey, each one independent yet part of a larger pack. When one found an opening, others followed. When prey grouped together, they surrounded it. This wasn't war. It was a hunt. The survivors from Station 7 brought back sensor recordings and damaged equipment. Engineer Minho's team worked around the clock analyzing everything. 3 days after the massacre, they had their first breakthrough. "The apex entities aren't all the same," Minho explained to the emergency strategy meeting. "We've identified at least 5 distinct types. The smallest are about fightercraft-sized, fast, and numerous. The largest ones we've seen are bigger than battleships. And the sensor data suggests there are even larger variants we haven't encountered yet. More importantly," Hana added, pulling up detailed scans, "they're not invincible. The resonance disruptors work. We just didn't have enough of them at Station 7. The ones we did deploy showed measurable effect." The apex entities pulled back from ships equipped with the disruptors. Tae-sung leaned forward. "How many disruptors do we have operational?" "About 300, Minho admitted. "We're producing more, but it takes time. Each one requires specific crystals that are rare. We're mining asteroids, raiding old Council stockpiles, doing everything we can to speed up production. 300 devices to defend thousands of systems," Day One said quietly. "We need more time." Ambassador Ji Woo had an idea. "Then we buy time. We evacuate the rim systems, pull back to a tighter defensive perimeter, concentrate our forces and our disruptors, make every battle cost them more than it costs us. The Council initially resisted the idea of abandoning entire systems, but reality had a way of forcing decisions. Over the next 2 weeks, the Apex pushed deeper into Council space. 3 more civilizations fell silent. Refugee fleets poured toward the core systems, bringing horror stories with them. Captain Yuna led evacuation operations in the Thalori home system. The aquatic aliens were abandoning their world, loading massive water-filled transport ships with as many citizens as they could. She coordinated the defense while transports launched, her squadron engaging small Apex entities that probed their formation. "Contact, bearing 270, a sensor officer called out. "It's different from the others." On the view screen, a new type of Apex entity appeared. It was smaller than the others, more compact, and it moved with clear intelligence rather than predatory instinct. When Yuna's fighters engaged it, the entity adapted, learning their tactics mid-battle. "It's studying us," Yuna realized. "Fall back to the transports." Defensive formation only, but the entity wasn't interested in destroying them. It observed, recorded, then retreated. Yuna felt a chill. The Apex was learning, just like Hannah had warned. Taisung launched a series of guerrilla operations, using hit-and-run tactics against isolated Apex entities. His forces would strike from asteroid fields and nebulae, deploy resonance disruptors at maximum power, then retreat before the Apex could respond. It was exhausting, dangerous work, but it slowed the advance. During one of these raids, something unexpected happened. Taesung's team engaged an Apex entity near a debris field. The disruptors wounded it severely, and instead of retreating, the creature became trapped in the wreckage of an old freighter. It was still alive, barely, but unable to escape. "Capture it," Taesung ordered. Making a split-second decision, his team used containment fields and specialized equipment to bring the wounded entity aboard their cargo hauler. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but the opportunity to study a live Apex specimen was too valuable to pass up. The entity was transported to Dr. Hana's research facility, a heavily shielded station deep in human-controlled space. When Hannah first saw it, she felt a mix of scientific fascination and pure terror. The creature was about 3 meters long, its body a disturbing blend of organic tissue and something that looked like living metal. It had multiple appendages, each one ending in structures that could either manipulate objects or tear through steel. "It's conscious," her xenobiology specialist reported. "Brain activity is high. It knows where it is." Hana spent weeks trying to communicate with the entity. She used translation algorithms, mathematical sequences, even direct neural interface attempts. Nothing worked. Then, almost by accident, she discovered that the entity responded to certain frequency patterns. Not language, but something more fundamental. The breakthrough came late one night. Hannah was running another frequency test when the entity suddenly pulsed with light. Her translation computer caught fragments of meaning. Not words, but concepts, images, emotions. Over the following days, a crude communication method emerged. The entity couldn't speak, but it could convey ideas through frequency modulation. What it told Hana changed everything. The Apex wasn't evil. It wasn't even malicious. It was a regulatory system, created millions of years ago by a civilization so advanced it had become worried about galactic stability. That ancient species had built the Apex as a safeguard, a force that would prevent any single civilization from growing powerful enough to destabilize the galaxy. "You are gardeners," Hana said to the entity, trying to understand. "And we are the plants you prune." The entity pulsed affirmation. Then it conveyed something more disturbing. The Apex didn't hate the species it culled. It had no emotions about them at all. It was simply following programming. When a civilization reached certain thresholds of power, expansion, or technology, the apex would reduce it back to acceptable levels. Sometimes this meant destroying them entirely. Sometimes it meant reducing their population and technology, then leaving them to recover. But why? Hannah asked. Why does the galaxy need balance? The entity showed her images. Galaxies torn apart by civilizations that grew too powerful. Reality itself breaking down under the weight of advanced technology. Entire sections of space rendered uninhabitable by weapons that shouldn't exist. The ancient builders of the apex had seen this happen before in other galaxies and had decided to prevent it here. So you're protecting the galaxy from us, Hannah said. By killing us. The entity pulsed what might have been agreement or regret. It was hard to tell. Hannah brought Admiral Day 1, Ambassador Jiwoo, and the senior staff to the research facility. They listened to her explanation in stunned silence. When she finished, Taesung spoke first. So we're being killed by a security system. A very old, very thorough security system that thinks it's protecting the galaxy. Yes, Hannah said. Can it be reasoned with? Jiwoo asked. Can we convince it we're not a threat? The entity pulsed negative. It could not be convinced. It could not change its programming. It was function and purpose, nothing more. The galaxy had grown wild, exceeding the parameters set by its long-dead creators. The apex was simply doing what it was designed to do. Day 1 looked at the contained entity. Then we can't negotiate. We can't hide. The only option is to destroy it. Destroy the apex prime, Hannah said. The entity told me about it. There's a central intelligence at the galactic core, coordinating all the apex entities. It's been there for millions of years. If we could reach it, destroy it, the entire system might collapse. That's over 20,000 light years away, Taesung pointed out. Through space controlled by thousands of apex entities. Plus, the radiation and gravity of the galactic core would kill any crew long before they arrived. It's impossible. Day 1 smiled grimly. Humanity has made a habit of doing impossible things. Get me Admiral Yuna and Engineer Minho. If we're going to die, we might as well die doing something spectacular. The entity in containment pulsed once more, conveying a final message to Hannah. It was a warning and a prophecy. The apex prime was vast beyond understanding, powerful beyond measure, and had never been defeated in millions of years of operation. If they truly intended to attack it, they should prepare for total annihilation. Noted, Hannah said to the entity. But you don't know humanity very well. We're very stubborn about surviving. The news that the apex was a defense system rather than a malevolent force spread through the allied fleets within days. The council species reacted with despair. They had been fighting against the natural order of the galaxy itself, against a system designed by beings far more advanced than any current civilization. But humanity reacted differently. So we're weeds in someone else's garden, Lieutenant Sora said during a briefing. Fine, but if the garden can't sustain life, then maybe it needs to be replanted. Admiral Day 1 presented the plan to the full council. It was audacious to the point of madness. Strike directly at the apex prime at the galactic core. A fleet would push through 20,000 light years of hostile space, survive the radiation and gravity of the core region, and destroy an intelligence that had maintained the galaxy for millions of years. This is suicide, Elder Kyra said, her light pulsing dark blue. The journey alone would take years with our fastest drives. The apex would intercept you long before you arrived. Engineer Minho stood and activated a holographic display. Not with this. He showed them the designs for a new type of drive, something humanity had been developing in secret. We call it the quantum tunnel drive. It doesn't move through space. It creates a temporary tunnel through space-time. We could reach the core in weeks instead of years. The power requirements are enormous, a Thalori engineer objected. And the risk of catastrophic failure is over 90%. 87%, Minho corrected. We've been running simulations. It's dangerous, yes, but it's possible. Ambassador Ji Wu addressed the council. We tried hiding from the apex for thousands of years. That didn't work. Now we know the truth. It will never stop hunting civilizations that grow beyond its parameters. We can accept that and live small, limited lives, or we can fight for the right to determine our own future. Humanity chooses to fight. The debate lasted 3 days. In the end, desperation and hope won over fear. The council agreed to commit their remaining forces to the mission. Every species would contribute ships and personnel. If they were going to die, they would die together, trying. The fleet assembled over the next 2 weeks. Captain Yuna commanded one wing, her mixed squadron of human and alien vessels working together with practiced efficiency. Captain Taesung led the assault divisions. Dr. Hana joined the mission, insisting that her knowledge of the apex might be crucial. Minho oversaw the installation of quantum tunnel drives on the lead ships. The fleet totaled 300 vessels, all that could be spared from defensive operations. It wasn't much against the thousands of apex entities between them and the core, but it would have to be enough. All ships report ready, Sora announced from her station on the flagship Defiance. She had been promoted to senior tactical officer, coordinating the entire fleet's weapon systems. Admiral Day 1 stood on the bridge, looking at the faces of his crew. Humans, Vril, Luminara, Thalori, and 6 other species working side by side. A month ago, this would have been unthinkable. Now it felt natural. Initiate quantum tunnel, he ordered. The sensation of tunneling through space-time was indescribable. Reality bent around the ships. Colors that shouldn't exist flickered across the view screens. And for a moment, everyone aboard felt like they existed in multiple places simultaneously. Then, with a jarring snap, they were elsewhere. The journey that should have taken years happened in jumps. Each tunnel required time to recharge the drives, and during those periods, the apex found them. The battles were brutal and constant. Yuna led her wing in the first major engagement, 3 days into the mission. Apex entities swarmed them from multiple directions. The resonance disruptors made a difference, but for every entity they destroyed, 2 more appeared. They're adapting to the disruptors, Yuna reported. The newer entities have different biology. The weapons are less effective. Minho worked frantically to modify the disruptor frequency, staying 1 step ahead of the apex's evolution. It became a deadly race. Human innovation versus ancient adaptation. Sometimes the humans won. Sometimes they didn't. The fleet lost ships in every battle. Good people died defending strangers from other worlds. A Vril pilot named Kresh sacrificed his ship to save a human transport. A Luminara engineer called Bright Star stayed aboard a failing reactor to keep it from exploding and taking the entire wing with it. A human captain named Daehyun rammed his destroyer into an apex entity the size of a moon, buying the fleet precious minutes to escape. They pushed deeper toward the core. The radiation levels increased until crew members needed constant medical treatment. The gravity wells pulled ships off course, requiring constant course corrections. And the apex entities grew larger, more numerous, more determined. Dr. Hana spent the journey analyzing data from the captured entity, which they had brought along in stasis. She discovered something important. The Apex Prime wasn't just coordinating the hunt. It was the apex. Every entity was connected to it, receiving instructions and tactical data in real time. If they could sever that connection, the entities would become disorganized, easier to defeat. How do we sever a connection across the entire galaxy? Day One asked. We don't, Hana said. We destroy the source. 2 weeks into the journey, they finally saw it. The Apex Prime existed at the very heart of the galactic core, in a region where stars were born and died in cosmic violence. It was vast beyond comprehension, a structure that dwarfed planets, built from organic and inorganic materials that had been collected over millions of years. It's beautiful, Sora whispered, staring at the view screen. It was. The Apex Prime pulsed with bioluminescence, creating patterns of light that rippled across its surface. Energy fields surrounded it, and thousands of Apex entities orbited it like moons around the planet. And now we have to destroy it, Taesung said grimly. The final battle was apocalyptic. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier gave everything they had. Yuna led wave after wave of strike craft into the Apex Prime's defenses, losing half her wing in the first hour. Taesung coordinated 17 simultaneous assault vectors, overwhelming the entity defenders through sheer tactical brilliance. Minho's resonance disruptors tore at the Prime's structure, creating wounds in its massive form. But it wasn't enough. The Prime adapted, regenerated, evolved. Its defenses learned from every attack. Its counterstrikes became more efficient. Ships died by the dozen. The beautiful Luminara light vessels shattered under directed energy attacks. Vril swarmcraft were swept away by gravitational pulses. Human battleships held the line until their hulls melted from the radiation exposure. Admiral Day One watched his fleet being destroyed and knew they were losing. The Apex Prime was simply too vast, too ancient, too well-designed. His predecessor's programming had anticipated every form of attack. Then Sora noticed something strange. Admiral, the Apex Prime is holding back. Look at the kill rate. It could destroy us much faster, but it's not. It's trying to preserve our ships. Hana understood immediately. It's still following its core directive. Preserve life. Maintain balance. It doesn't want to destroy us. It wants to regulate us. An idea formed. Dangerous, probably insane, but their only chance. Hana opened a communication channel directly to the Apex Prime, using the frequency patterns she had learned from the captured entity. Stop, she transmitted. Look at us. Really look at us. The Apex Prime paused. For 30 seconds, every entity in the system stopped fighting. The vast intelligence focused its attention on the surviving fleet. Hana continued. Your creators built you to maintain balance and prevent civilizations from growing too powerful and destroying themselves. But look at what we've become. 12 different species, former strangers and rivals, fighting together. We're not expanding in isolation anymore. We're not threatening the galaxy. We've created the balance you were designed to enforce. She transmitted images from the journey. Different species working together, sacrificing for each other, united against a common threat. Your purpose was to prevent galactic instability. But we're not unstable anymore. We're united. The very act of fighting you has transformed us into what your creators wanted. A cooperative galactic civilization. The Apex Prime processed this information. Its vast intelligence, built over millions of years, examined the data from every angle. The humans and their allies had indeed changed. They were no longer separate species competing for resources. They had become interdependent, cooperative, balanced. The transmission came back on the same frequency. Not words, but concepts and images. The Apex Prime was acknowledging the truth of Hana's statement. Then came a question, conveyed through pure meaning. If this was true, would they maintain this balance? Or would they return to their old ways once the threat was gone? Ambassador Jiwoo took over the communication. We give you our word. All species represented here pledge to maintain cooperation, and balance. We will form a true galactic union, not a council of fear, but a partnership of equals. We will police ourselves. Your intervention will no longer be necessary." A long silence followed. The Apex Prime was making a decision that would affect the entire galaxy for millennia to come. Around the bridge, humans and aliens held their breath. Finally, the response came.